Good morning and nā mai haere mai. Welcome to our council meeting for the 3rd of April. And this morning, welcome Kevin from the Salvation Army to open our meeting.
Thank you. Let me pray for us all. Almighty God, this is a day you have made, a day when councillors and others come to present matters. I pray that as all we listen, discuss, debate, make decisions on these issues. I know, Lord, that not all decisions are easy to make, so I pray that as the council represents the people, there will be positive outcomes for this district and those living within it. Lord, give guidance and wisdom throughout this time, and may your blessing be on all people. Amen.
Thank you, Kevin. Anything to any highlights going on in your work and in your church or in the Christian Leaders Network?
From the Christian Leaders Network, they recently had an outreach into the community, which was very positive. And the churches are gearing up for this Easter time coming up, which is one of the big significant things in the Christian faith. And so we're all in pretty good health and working together for this district.
Excellent, thank you. And I just also want to mention the volunteers from the Building Christian Leaders Network who've helped out with 2 campus programs full on in the last term. So appreciate that and more to come. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right, apologies this morning. We have Councillor Ford and Councillor Blackmore and our Chief Executive leave of absence. They are attending the Zone 3 meeting in Bara. And Councillor Bell, is Councillor Bell on Zoom? No, not yet. Okay, I'll go to item 3, confirmation of minutes. We have a recommendation there. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Short.
I'd like to move that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 20th of March 2025 be adopted as a true and correct.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Quigley. Thank you. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item 4, declaration of interest. Any other topics on the agenda today that any members may wish to declare? None? Thank you. We have no public forum, so we can go straight into our presentations, and it's a pleasure to welcome Nathaniel and Cadence. But first, Nathaniel, come and join us, and look forward to hearing about your experience in the Youth Nationals under 16 touch rugby.
Not quite.
Oh, not. Oh, I don't know. I'm just reading my. Yeah. Right, you will correct me.
Okay. Let's just go for it.
Absolutely.
Hi everyone. My name's Nathaniel. Public speaking is not my thing, but I'm very grateful for the opportunity to both be here and thank you all today. So I wish to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the Manawatū District Council for the sponsorship that enabled me to attend the World Kickboxing Association Asia Pacific Kickboxing Championships held in Bali this February. Thanks to your support, I am proud to announce that I won gold in 2 divisions and took silver in another, competing fiercely against talented fighters from countries such as Australia, Iran, New Zealand, and Indonesia. It was an incredible experience, and although I faced a challenging matchup, ultimately losing to a fellow New Zealand competitor in my 3rd division, it only served to fuel my passion and commitment to the sport. As I look towards the future, I'm excited to transition into a coaching role. I'm eager to pass on the knowledge and techniques of these experiences to the next generation of kickboxers. I also wish to find a way within to work within our community using martial arts as a base to have a positive impact and hopefully give back some opportunities that have been given to me. Your belief in me has been invaluable in reaching these significant milestones, and for that I cannot thank you all enough. I appreciate your support and commitment to not only my journey but all of our community and the events. Thank you.
Thanks, Nathaniel, and my apologies. Kickboxing. Yes, I'm just reading out what was on.
No,
the
that's
But, so congratulations.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. So you went all the way to Bali to end up having to fight against a fellow Kiwi.
Yeah, that was just how it works in those
Yeah,
things, you know,
absolutely.
the best make it to the end and then it's just how it goes. Yeah.
So coaching, have you started that work or is it something you're looking to?
Yeah, so I've been coaching for a couple of years within our gym, but I want to extend that and now, especially with youth, I want to start up a free program in fielding for youth basically, but while still coaching and training at our gym in Palmerston.
That's amazing and thank you for that for our young people. Any questions, councillor Quarry?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. You've got speakers. Congratulations. There's nothing better from a personal point of view, being in this job, than to meet people like yourself who represent and achieve well on the world scene. So congratulations, well done. You're a model citizen for our community, so fantastic. How many countries and how many people were competing in your class?
In my specific classes, I had, I believe 6 fights. So, kind of, I don't know the overall numbers of people, but there was, I think, yeah, Bali, Indonesia, New Zealand, Iran, Australia at this particular event. So yeah, I competed against Australia first, sorry, then Iran, then I competed against a New Zealander on that day, and the following day was Iran and New Zealand again.
So your class would be a certain.
Oh, sorry, yes. So I competed in the 76 to 79 kilogram division of K1 kickboxing, K1 low kick, and also K1 light contact. Yeah, so 3 divisions.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Councillor Shaw.
Cape Valley, what a dreadful venue.
Yeah.
I hope you stayed on a little bit longer afterwards.
Oh, to be honest, I've got 3 kids, so I was missing them like mad. So I did the shopping I had to do and came back.
Yeah, I was wondering if we can look at your blend.
Absolutely, yeah. What do I just bring them over to you? Or?
No.
Wow. That's a gold from Upton.
Councillor Hatfield, Melbourne down.
So as well as your coaching, your goal is to what? Keep going up the levels?
I'm still passionate about it, but my goals within kickboxing have changed. So I always wanted to be the world champ, so to speak, and things like that. But now it's changed, and I'm seeing the new generation come through, and I really want to get involved with that. But yeah, for me, it's probably done.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. And like I said, giving back to our young people, that's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, there's a bit of weight in those.
Cool, getting old when you change your focus.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, it's changed that.
Or having children.
And you complain about the amount of cane.
Yeah.
Go about the long way.
Thank you.
Nathaniel, thank you. It was a privilege and a pleasure to be able to help you in a small way towards the cause. But like Councillor Quarry said, the fact that you were representing not just Manawatū, but New Zealand, congratulations, that's fantastic. And look forward to the work that you're going to do with our young ones. And please, if there's any barriers in the way of being able to do that, and if you think council might be able to help or have a chat to someone, please let us know.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Speaker, yeah.
Right, welcome, Cadence, come and join us. Both of you can come up to the table there. And hopefully the wording is right on this one. You represented us at the Youth Nationals under 16 touch rugby.
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. So share with us some highlights.
Thank you so much for the funding. It played a crucial role in allowing me to attend the Youth Touch Nationals. As a 13-year-old, I was able to participate in the mixed under 16s game. And I still have a couple more years in under 16s, which was an amazing experience. Our team finished 12th, and although we didn't win, I learned so much and had an amazing time competing alongside my teammates. The funding helped cover travel and accommodation costs, making it possible for me to be a part of this unforgettable event. I'm really grateful for the opportunity and would love to attend next year to continue improving my skills and being part of such a great team.
That's awesome. Well done. And so the other people in your team came from, how far away were they in New Zealand, or were they mostly Lower North Island?
They were mostly Lower North Island.
Excellent. And how often were you training?
We were training every weekdays and weekends.
So what, early morning, after school?
Some were after school on the weekdays, and then on the weekends, we would sometimes have 5-hour trainings. So we'd start early in
Wow.
the
Wow, what a
afternoon.
commitment. Wow. And where to next for you?
Next year I'll be going back probably once 16s again.
Excellent. And so your ultimate goal, no doubt, will be the New Zealand team?
Yeah.
Excellent. Open it up for any further questions from our team. Councillor Underwood.
So were you the youngest in the team, being 13?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My friend, she was also 13, but I was the youngest.
So do you have a coach at school, or who coaches you and your friend? Do you get coached together?
Yeah, so my whole team got coached together, but there was a parent that was coaching us.
Yeah. And you've got some natural talent, obviously, to be in at that age.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cadence, for coming today. It was a privilege to be able to help you in a small way. And I just want to say thank you to your family for supporting you, because I know that it doesn't happen on your own. So thank you for supporting our young people, and in particular Cadence. So we look forward to seeing your name up there again in lights eventually. So well done, and thank you for coming today to share your experience.
Can I just say thank you as well? It really helped us as a family to get Cadence there, because with Cadence, touch footy, it's not her only sport that she plays. So the following week she attended Māori touch as well, and then a couple of weeks later she'll be attending nationals for netball and then school. So it's just one code that she plays. So it's been was significantly a big help for us. So which will then enable her to be able to play the other sports and do everything else that she does at a representative level. So from our family, we appreciate that, and thank you
It's
so much.
fantastic. So what other sports do you play?
Netball, rugby, rugby.
Rugby, soccer.
Yeah.
I had to take up golf.
That's amazing. So well done and congratulations, and particularly at your age, and you've obviously got huge potential. So thank you for coming this morning.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we have no later items, no recommendations from committees. So we can go to item 9, and this is where we receive highlights from any of our community meetings that have been held in the last fortnight. So we have a couple here. Colleton, Councillor Blackmore's not here today. Did anyone else attend that meeting? I understand it was very positive. They've approved the landscape plan. They had a community day on Sunday. Yeah, Councillor Shaw.
Councillor Ford and Councillor Blackmore both went, and I went. Yes, and it was a good day. I heard someone say they were disappointed with the numbers, but I thought the numbers were pretty good, and I was really engaged. And evening, and of course we finished with a barbecue, and it was a lovely sunny day. So it was a good event.
Thank you, and it's great to hear it's Colleton, because you know we've tried a few times with their committee, but they've certainly got some projects ahead of them. Hamatangi Beach, Councillor Quarry.
No, sorry, I couldn't attend that meeting. But I understand there is some concerns about stormwater and drainage issues.
Thank you. So they will no doubt be passed on. And then last night, of course, we had our joint annual community committee get together, which ran well. Thank you to the team. It was a good night, and I think that being able to share the different projects and what they're doing and concerns, I think helps everybody, and it certainly helps us here how we can help even more. Thank you. Any other community committees that have met? No. So we move to 9.2. Any liaison councillors with our marae hapu have had any connections in the last fortnight? Councillor Short.
Thank you. Yes, Paddle Wagga Wagga. I had a coffee catch up with their chief of Brown, but also Fran Betty, who's in her day role, which is she's the Māori advisor at RDC. So Paddle Wagga Wagga has learned interests in both. Just talk what's on top for them. Ongoing consents with the Defence Force, just monitoring river management in the lower Rangitikei, and the project that they've got at the marae at the moment is the refurbishing a couple of their Manawatū flats.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Bell's not with us yet. Ash?
Yes.
No.
I've been here. Can you hear me?
Okay, we can hear you, we can't see you.
So my video's on. Ash, can you see me?
We can now.
Okay.
Right. Councillor Bell, you wanted to tell us about the collective meeting.
Yes. So firstly, I want to mihi to Hamish for attending Te Kotu Reo. We had a Te Kotu Reo hui last Thursday night, where we did the presentation on local waters done well. It was received well. Hamish did a good job. You did a good job, Hamish. Well done. Ngā mihi kia koe. I think now's the opportunity for the marae council liaisons for you to have a discussion. I know one has already had one pre consultation. So there's a marae that's already aware. Thank you for that. But now's the time where you guys can have your own conversations in the next, up until the 11th of April. Next week, Monday, we will have another presentation that will go wider than Te Kotu Reo. So Te Kotu Reo are going to invite all their claimants under each marae, and Hamish, Shane and I will present to that. Further to Te Kotu Reo, this was their second meeting of this year that I was invited to. Things that they're looking at is obviously the Māori ward referendum. I've given them some feedback of what other councils are doing and the discussions that we are having. And at the moment, they are now mobilising to hold what we call a pōti tini. Pōti means to vote. Tini is a play on effect of matatini. So matatini is our Olympics in Māoridom for kapahaka. So we're going to make it a fun event where we educate our own community, Māori community, of what it means. There are a lot of misinformation that there is no Māori ward referendum. They believed by retaining the Māori ward that we were safe. So we'll clear that up really quickly. But that's the update from Te Kotu Reo that was discussed at our last meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions of any of those councillors? Councillor Belsky.
Can I ask
Yes,
Councillor
you
Bell?
speak up, so.
Oh, sorry, yeah. I haven't heard from Tanya, the ward that, the iwi that I was going to represent, but I haven't heard from her. I've sent her a few emails to make contact, and I was just asking Councillor Bell if she could just give Tanya a call or something to see how we can get things moving.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Bowski. Can do that.
I'm free all May, June, July, but this month I'm a bit tied up. But anyway, I thought I'd just get something moving. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Thank you for that. Right, moving on, we're on to officers' report, and we're on page 13. First one is plan change by. This is seeking to approve the plan and make it operative, and it's the final step in the process. So, welcome to the team, Lynn, Matt, and staff.
Rene, your worship, good morning, councillors. Your worship has provided a really good summary of this first report. So it is the final step in the process of a plan change. The plan change was to align the district plan with the updated requirements of the RMA, and also set us up for future plan changes. Started a great job on that, and we had 2 submissions. The hearing was adjourned because of the work done. So we've had a decision, we've passed the point of appeal, and yes, the plan change can now be made operative through a council decision. I'm basically here to answer any questions if there are any questions about that.
Thank you. Right, so let's open it up for Christian's discussion. Councillor Campbell.
Seems to me this is just a procedural matter. You're looking to make operative set of minor amendments, and you've already done consultation, no appeals. So it seems to me there's no reason not to approve it.
Thank you. If you want to test that on the motion, councillor Short, sorry.
Thank you. I did have a few queries that I emailed through and just wanted to comment that the building Rudy hierarchy map was 10 years old and it didn't capture some of the new roads, so don't know whether that means.
So I could speak to that just for the benefit of all the elected members. So councillor Short had a couple of questions in terms of some of the content in there. And we clarified things such as there are parts of the plan which, we are still updating. So the reference to the roading map, yes, there is a roading map in there which is old. As we review that transport section, that will be updated. So that's kind of that comes in the next plan changes.
Okay, so given that this, if we approve this, it becomes operative as of the 17th of April. So those changes will be made by then.
No, those changes would be in the future plan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Does that answer your queries?
So get emails backwards and forwards.
Thank you, councillor Campbell.
I'll move then that the council approves plan change. So 1I. Minor amendments to the Manawatū district plan pursuant to clause 17(2) of the Schedule 1 of the Resource Management Act 1991 in accordance with the decisions of the hearing commissioner dated 14th of February 2025. And the council declares the plan change I minor amendments will become operative as of 17th of April 2025 in accordance with clause 20 of Schedule 1 of the Resource Management Act 1991.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Short. Any further discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Thanks, team, for all the good work there.
Yeah.
And following on with planning, we go to 10.2, page 18. This is seeking approval to notify plan change B, which is the residential review, and plan change E, which is the town centre review. I'll hand it over to Nat for any comments and the team or any comments, and then I suggest that we take the discussion and questions first of all with the residential and then move to the town centre.
Thank you, Your Worship. So yes, we are proceeding with our plan changes as part of the district plan review. The purpose of this report is to seek council approval to notify plan change B, the residential review, and plan change E, town centre. We've been at council to previously workshop the draft plan changes. We've had feedback on those draft plan changes. The planning team, which is Richard and Dan Batley from Evergreen Planning, have responded to the different points raised in submissions and looked at how we need to change those plan changes. And so we believe that they're at a point now where they can be released to start that formal process. So for recap, the formal process is where we notify, we seek submissions on that so that people can make comment, and then from that point we'll go to a hearing. At this point, and I'll talk to the different plan changes in summary a little bit, and then you can ask questions as needed. So at this point, I would say that the
the feedbacks, the direction of those two plan changes matches what we've talked about with elected members for a long time. And so there's been some edits and tweaks, of course, in response to the feedback we've received and some helpful advice, suggestions. But there's no kind of massive significant changes to those general directions. I think it's also important to point out we're not seeking what's called immediate legal effect. So remember that as we notify a plan change, the current rules in the district plan stay. Those are the ones that play until people have had their chance, justice to submit, turn up at a hearing and make submissions. So it's after that point that the plan change really lands. So in terms of the content, we have got these two, and it's a significant amount of work. So I do appreciate the work of the team, and a big part of, these are two of council's priority projects as part of the district plan review. So when we look at residential plan change B, and this is Daniel's work. So it is really a review of what our current fielding residential zone is. It's a review and working on looking at what's working and not working. The three big changes are on page 72 of the audit paper, if that's helpful. And so in particular, we're looking at housing choices and how do we make sure that that fielding enables a range of housing choices, how we respond to stormwater and managing those concerns, and again, looking at the interrelationship between subdivision and planning and housing rules. So a number of changes are included in that, and Danny's here to answer any questions if needed. In the town centre, so that is planned on summarised on page 177. That is a different plan change. So in one sense, they're both reviews, whereas I would say that in the residential zone, it's adding and evolving of what the residential zone is right now. The town centre is a more fundamental review of what was there. It started off being tweaks, as has been discussed a lot, and quite quickly grew to something which we actually saw there was a lot of efficiency and effectiveness to make some changes. So that, again, on page 177 of the audit paper, it discusses the different moves or changes that we made. At this point, seeking council approval for notify, that starts the process. I'm happy to answer questions as councillors.
Thank you, Matt. Let's open it up for questions. Councillor Headfield.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I've got a few, and I'll go through just page numbers, if that's okay.
Yes.
Points of clarification and run through questions. So if we can, be with me. Just on page 22, 4.4, I was just actually wondering what impact changes to the Resource Management Act may have on this process.
Yeah.
Just
quickly. Yeah. So we know that the Resource Management Act is going to be changed. Indications are that the first likely, date or tranche is later. There's later this year in terms of national direction, and 2027 in terms of a more formal change. My take is that this is consistent with the direction that we believe central government is heading, which is to say, councils, you should be thinking about what does a district plan say, and when are you asking for resource consent or not, and being very mindful about just letting development happen in those urban zones. And so as our read of that national direction, I would say that we're pretty consistent. Naturally, whatever comes out of that of central government change, that may mean an extra movement of ours in the future, whether that means another plan change, or alternatively, we wonder if central government might direct change, which would have immediate legal effect, and we'll just respond.
Thanks, Matt. And just ripping through to page 23, 7.3, which just talk a little bit about a future review of the development contribution pricing. This actually may be a conversation for later on, but what I was wondering there is whether or not we determined a position, just to remind me, for DCs around medium density housing, but that may be a conversation for later, perhaps. Yep.
Yep.
Okay. And then page 28. Just in terms of the earthquake faults and sub GRZ P6.1, love all these numbers, Gregor. What impact is the, and Bridget, forgive me for the pronunciation of this, the Raotarangi fault line? What impact does that have in terms of this?
Yeah, so I'll speak to this a little bit and then Daniel can come in too. So we know that the fault work exists. The fault work hasn't been translated into a district plan rule, and we are planning on doing that as part of the natural hazards formal review. So that would be a secondary plan change to this. Right now, we are providing words into the district plan to help with that, but the math work or the line work doesn't exist in the district plan. Do you want to add anything to that?
Just that the subdivision process is very much geared up to ensure those things don't get missed. So it's important that we have commentary in the district plan to point those consent planners to the right levels of information with interaction with horizons and that sort of thing. But the Resource Management Act, in absence of map things in a district plan, still gives us the ability to make sure that those hazards don't go missed in the process.
I have to say, the last time we looked at this, I believe was on probably the 17th of October last year, when we looked at, when we were presented with 40 pages for Plan Change B and I think 51 pages for Plan Change E. That was a bit to get our head around through the multitudinous number of pages here of stuff. But moving on to page 31, sub GRZ MD.6, whether a smaller building platform is practicably feasible, which should be shown by detailed design of the proposed residential unit. Can you tell me what that means?
So basically with housing choice comes a multitude of different housing typologies, lot sizes, arrangements and all that sort of thing. Traditionally, we talk about larger lot sizes where through site coverage, it's pretty generic in how you can fit a standalone dwelling on a 400, 500 square metre section. When we start to talk about medium density housing and providing an alternative choice, houses are getting smaller. So with that comes smaller building platforms. So when those lot sizes start to get a bit tighter, we need to ensure through the consent process that they're not so tight you can't feasibly fit a dwelling unit on there. So basically that matter of discretion is just giving us the ability to go, okay, we need a little bit more information here just to see that everything's going to work on the ground.
Thanks, Dan. I would never have picked that up out of that wording, but there you go.
If I may, Chair, just a point of clarification, I emailed through an updated version last night, which did make some edits to the matters of discretion. I think the councillor's question is still legit because we're not changing, that update isn't changing the intent or the what we're seeking, it's just changing some of those words. So question still stands.
I don't think it'd be fair, Matt, having 5 days to go through this stuff. Mate, last night was it? Yeah, I was all asked. So moving on to page 33 under GRZ ST1, I'm assuming that there's an assumption or a presumption here that these would be serviced.
Yes, all residential development serviced.
Would be serviced. Okay,
yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
And then page 34 over ST7 and ST8, the terminology completed by a suitably qualified person. And I looked at that and I'm wondering, one, what's a suitably qualified person? And does this process, well, how cost effective is it? Does it increase the good old, the consultant, so-called experts? And I just had a query around whether it's helpful or cost effective.
Yeah, so I guess through case law, through hearings, through consenting, the term suitably qualified person has become the norm without being too prescribed to say it has to be exactly this person. And then through a process, an applicant might have an engineer of slightly different background. You don't want to preclude different people being involved in the process. The provision itself around stormwater and I guess further detail is very much driven by medium density housing and acknowledging the fact that it's very different to traditional residential development, as I said before, around larger lot sizes, standalone dwellings. You then go into conjoined dwellings, intensified development, a lot of hard stand area, a lot of impervious surfaces. The impact on stormwater networks is significantly higher. So there needs to be a higher bar through applications that come into council for those projects to say, this is exactly how we're going to demonstrate we're going to deal with this, with the stormwater runoff, because the last thing we want is when there's essentially no permeable surfaces or very limited, that we don't want overflow into neighbouring properties. We don't want significant flows into road reserves that then flood those areas. So it's just making sure the plan change has medium density housing requiring a consent as a start point. That's a normal thing. This is just making it really clear what the information requirements are through that process.
Which then takes me on to leads into the next one, which is on page 40, P3.2. Integrated approach to stormwater management that provides for on-site treatment and attenuation. I get the attenuation, but I'm wondering, what do we mean by on-site treatment?
So in some cases, depending on soil typologies, you can do soak pits where stormwater can go into attenuation and then trickle into a soak pit, and then obviously the water soaks away through the soils. The wording is intentionally trying to keep it open, because stormwater treatment is an evolving beast that keeps changing. Our preference is that obviously where the network is available, that development connects into council's network, but at the same time we acknowledge that that network's getting upgrades and improvements over time. So we need to make sure that the provisions sort of account for everything along that time frame. So if something happens tomorrow, we have strong provisions in there around stormwater. I personally believe stormwater is probably the biggest issue facing residential development in the country at the moment. So there's a very intentional push in this plan change to, as I say, increase the bar or the level of information required for stormwater, so we don't end up with bad outcomes down the track, which other councils have found themselves in when they haven't given it the necessary attention.
Thanks, Ben. I'm about 3/4 of the way down 100 metres. On page 42, item 4 is around collection and storage of tyres. And I actually just wondered what impact this might have on the new tyre, collection scheme where, people pay for when you buy a tyre now, don't you? You pay for the handover to the disposal thing.
That's the regional, I mean, it's just a note.
It's just a note.
It's just a note. Okay.
It's a note. That's the regional council space to organise.
Thank you. 48, page 48. Yeah, actually, I just wanted a bit of clarification, and Bridget might be able to help here on Pipakaya housing. Does that specifically apply to Maori-owned land only? Is that the
so in the residential residential, no. So what we've heard and what we've heard in the different meetings over time is that building urban area, there is an interest in Papakāinga housing, but there is no whenua Māori title on which that would apply. So you including a rule to say Papakāinga only applying on Māori title is that just doesn't exist.
Well, and look, I may be wrong, but was my understanding that the definition of Papakāinga was actually on Maori-owned land. So have I got that wrong?
It depends on what a council would choose to do.
Okay, Bridget's got it.
Councillor Bell.
Tēnā koe, Councillor Hadfield. Thank you for that question. Supporting what Matt has just explained before, that there are dreams to have Papakāinga urban and rural. However, there's no Māori whenua that's currently under kōwhata in our urban space. Papakāinga hasn't been defined by our council yet, and so I'm mindful that like if we look in Te Reo the Valley, in literal blocks of land, it's weaved in with Māori whenua and general whenua. That causes some challenges, and I believe last year our GNZ Minister Chris Bishop spoke about alleviating some of those challenges. I haven't seen anything come through yet, Matt. I was wondering if you could speak to that, because he did announce that publicly, which got us quite excited, because that's a huge challenge for the Valley. Has anything come through?
No, not yet. So again, in the central government seem to be helpful to standardise where that's appropriate. There was talk about some form of national direction about papakāinga. So, hey, councils, this is what you should do. It wasn't clear what level of, like, is that just a policy to say, hey, you should be looking at this, or a level of detail to go, this is what it means. We haven't seen the outcome of that yet, Councillor Bell. And so, and I would respond in agreement that we, through the district plan, then need to unpack what papakāinga means with iwi hapu. And I'm looking forward to hoping getting some feedback on this to go, well, you know, based on what we've heard, is that what we're expecting to see? So,
it would be good to have clarity around that.
To also answer one of the questions that you just asked, Grant, about what papakāinga means. On the consultation that was done at a surface level that Matt, you had started a couple of years ago.
Yep.
With kōwhata Parewahua in the Valley that attended. Part of the conversations we have as mana whenua of what papakāinga means to us is ancestral ties. Yeah. So if you whakapapa to this area, then that is also seen as papakāinga. But that's something that we would have to workshop with marae and then come back to council to see the comfortability of that kind of definition, because essentially that means anyone can make a papakāinga, and there's cultural practices that are attached to a papakāinga.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Bell. Getting there, on page 49,
Can I just interrupt, because I had a question on that same one we've just, sorry to interrupt, but on the same one rather than have to come back to it. So my question is, if we're looking to say where no more than 5 separate residential units are established, given the backlash we had from the community around the KO housing, and you could argue apply it to the Manawatū Community Trust and the social housing, why wouldn't we have that same ruling across those?
I think that's a really tricky topic and a tricky question that does come up a lot in this space, but I think the central government direction is our sort of start point, that they have provided a means to enable papakāinga housing through district planning, and have been quite clear around what papakāinga housing would look like, and how to enable it through district plans. And I think it is treated very separately from general housing. So I guess for us as planners, we've been responsive to that central government direction around acknowledging that there is a housing typology for tangata whenua and mana whenua to provide for their cultural needs and the way that they historically have sought to I guess create living environments. There's a number of funding through Te Puni Kōkiri. There's funding opportunities for them to establish those housing. So it's kind of matching up the planning provisions to the wider direction around papakāinga housing. I don't think from central government's perspective, it's not intended to be open to just general housing.
Thank you. I totally support papakāinga intention, but isn't it, this is our district plan, aren't we as a community able to, you know, the feedback that we got with the kāinga ora developments was not about not having them, it was about the scale of them. So I would have thought here's an opportunity, if we want to do that, to put this something similar into for general residential, and my question is, would that also apply to social housing? Because I guess, you know, you go to the other extreme and say, so it's okay to build a multi-level 60, 100 unit KO block or flats or whatever. We're okay with that. So I'm just questioning, given we've got an example right on our doorstep now, whether we should be having that conversation.
I think it's part of the conversation with as part of this residential review, because smaller unit living, you know, is putting people closer together. How councils respond to that is probably alongside the stormwater thing. It is the number one question about, you know, is our residential zone permissive, or is everything need resource consent to the nth degree? And what level of involvement do neighbours have in those kinds of housing decisions? So like it is the planning question, what you're voting to vote, Richard. And my kind of view is that through this notification, you know, there'll be the fact sheet which talks about the different housing forms that we're proposing to increase. We want people to kind of provide feedback on how we are providing housing choice. But we also need to be careful in that, because to Dan's point, you know, there is direction that councils, you need to get out of the way and not be automatically requiring resource consent at every moment for everything, because government's view is that too often neighbours are having you know, the say of the neighbours in terms of stopping things is not acceptable. And it's a tension though, right? As you go into it.
Yeah, so what you're saying is the community has the opportunity through the submission process to tell us if that's something they want us to look at.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you.
Continue the last table, Richard.
Absolutely.
Just a quick one on page 49 around home business. Is the equivalent of 3 FTEs predicated on an 8-hour day? Is it that specific? And the other thing is if you need to understand what that is, and I'm assuming then that a consent would be required if it exceeded.
Yeah, so I mean, home businesses is a common thing that's provided for in the residential zone. It has been in the operative plan, and it obviously is moving forward. There, I guess, with again, as much as there's housing choice, there's people that are seeking alternative ways to work, whether that be a home office or a small business that's run out of their property. So the provisions that have been built into this plan are very consistent with, I guess, the national sort of approach to home businesses. Around 100 square metres is not a huge amount of space these days, but allowing the full-time persons is more accounting for people that obviously live there, but also they might have 1 or 2 staff that come in from off-site. It's not the activity itself is restricted in terms of its hours of operation, but full-time equivalence is a defined thing as someone that's engaged full-time, but acknowledge that that's a moving feast.
So you could have 12 staff on 0.3 or whatever.
Yeah,
technically,
I suppose. Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Can I also add to that? So how does existing businesses that don't fit that criteria operate? The likes of GeoWorks, Harcourts, that sit in the residential zone, but they don't necessarily comply with those rules.
No, so they're triggered by a different rule in the plan because they're a commercial activity in the residential zone. So if you think of the primary purpose of the zone is to provide for housing. So a home business is an ancillary use to the primary use, which is a house. There's always a number of existing activities that exist in a zone that hold existing use rights, like GeoWorks that have been there for a long time. They can continue to operate under those existing use rights. But in terms of new activities wanting to set up in the residential zone, it's not a common thing that we would enable if they were a standalone commercial use, because obviously Richard's done a lot of work in the town centre space and mixed use zone. We need to protect the integrity of our different zones. So for those standalone uses, they should be going into a more commercial framework than the residential.
Okay, so you're saying, after what you've just said, if GeoWorks decided to move, because prior to that there was a beauty business there, so you're saying they still retain that right, that sites can still have a commercial type business?
Yep, so existing use rights last for 12 months. And it's about commensurate effects. So if there's been a historic lawfully established commercial activity on a site in the residential zone and one commercial activity moves on, the next commercial activity would have a 12-month window to take up that opportunity. If that 12 months lapses, then it reverts back to the residential use that sits underneath.
Thank you. Councillor Hedford.
So pretty much getting there. Just in terms of the standards on page 54, in ST 1.2, one set of duplex residential units for 700 metres squared. And I've made a note here, and I'm sort of thinking, well, how does that impact the, the sort of proposal that Gary Thompson presented us with on the DC discussion? And, so again, what would and look, it may be in there, I may have missed it. What's the minimum site size for medium density? And then what's medium density coverage?
So medium density under the plan defaults automatically to a restricted discretionary activity consent. So you can't do medium density over and above the 2 duplex. So 2 duplex units on one site is a permitted activity. So that's allowing for someone to redevelop a site, put 2 houses that it can join on there without too many barriers to entry, because it is akin to just a standalone dwelling, but it is separated into 2 units. Medium density is a number of units on a site. Could be 3, 4, 5, up to 10 or more. So because there's so many different variances of medium density, it's an accepted practice that those trigger a consent. And then it's about the application standing on its own 2 feet and it basically putting its case forward as to why that medium density. And that comes back to the context analysis and the matters of discretion and the policy framework that directs good design outcomes. We don't stipulate minimum lot sizes or coverage for medium density because it's about, this is what we're proposing. These are the different factors we've considered throughout, and then the consent planners will assess that proposal on the clearance because it's at that consent level.
So does that mean that if somebody wanted to build, say, 2, 3 bedroom co-joined residential units,
yeah,
as opposed to somebody that wanted to, say, build 3 single bedroom co-joined units, doing 3 would trigger a consent?
Yeah.
So doesn't that seem a bit onerous? But,
I guess we have to draw lines somewhere, because at what point do you trigger the need for intervention, I suppose, or more consideration of an application? So, it could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 3, 4, 5. Where does that line sit? I think for the context that we're within and being in the field and not having medium density provisions at the moment, site coverage is still at play. So it's about setting appropriate thresholds to allow development to occur, where we need to have a stronger lens across that development to ensure there's no effects on the neighbours, on the wider environment. When we start getting up into multiple units on a site, there is more risk of that occurring. So council needs to have that ability not to say no, just to make sure that the appropriate considerations are had through that development.
And that takes me back to the point that Gary Thompson was making the other day in terms of, what he was proposing in terms of, having probably more economically efficient use of the land area available. I struggle with that part of it, to be honest.
And back to Matt's point before, from our perspective as the drafters, I suppose, of the plan, we've created a start point. Whether that start point then goes out to the community and is tested, it could get submissions. That number could change. If we get a number of submissions that say, hey, 2 units is too low, we think it'll get tested through that notification and hearing environment, and we expect that it will.
We met with Gary, and shared about sort of the direction of the things that we're thinking about, which is essentially saying, yes, we need to provide these different choices. To Dan's point, this is exactly the stuff that the content that people submit on, saying, hey, council, you haven't got this quite right, or there's a question mark around, is in this situation versus this situation, your planning rules don't quite speak to that. My comment to this area for the elected member's sake is that what's in this proposal is that yes, you need a resource consent, but you need a resource consent at what's called restricted discretionary. So we're already stepping back from what the operative plan says right now. So in the current district plan, if you don't comply with those standards, in particular around subdivision, you're jumping up to the most extreme category of resource consent. There's a lot of, there's no direction. It's unclear about what's acceptable or not, which is kind of Gary's point, where he's saying, I don't know what your plan wants. So here we are trying to populate this is the expectations, this is what we're anticipating in terms of that choice. and we'll get feedback to.
And look, that's good, because I think the point Gary was making was the, you know, the financial burden of bureaucracy. And the fact that, you know, if we want to get anywhere near, you know, having a decent crack at lowering costs in housing, you know, and probably the government's pushing that way, is to remove some of the bureaucratic impediments that we face. So that feels a bit more like a.
Can I just add to that? So taking what you just said, it doesn't align with what we're proposing for Papakainga houses. We're saying no more than 5 separate housing units are a permitted activity. But we're saying it's not if you're not Papakainga.
Yeah, so the comment to that would be that what we've heard from what a Papakainga looks like is not the same as what the example that Councillor Hadfield just shared, where it's sort of whole houses. The comment we've heard is that there is more communal living, smaller, tighter units, and so there is a difference there that we are anticipating.
Okay, before Councillor Hadfield moves on to his next point, in that same space, where do I find GRZ 13?
We're sorry, what page is the reference on?
54.
Page 54. It says see those 2 references, but I couldn't find the second one, 13.
Oh, right, yeah, that's changed, so it's just that error in the.
Okay, so that's.
So that should be GRZ, it's not 13, it should be 8.
So that will be changed.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Hadfield.
I think it feels a bit more like a 440 than a 100-metre sprint, your worship, but I think I might just leave it there for residential. Thanks, and thanks for your answers.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. Mine's just a process question. Further down the track, when both these chapters are adopted, if any further mana whenua in our rohi was settled, how would we then add in any statutory acknowledgements or iwi management plans?
So it's a really good question. You know, we know that a lot of iwi hapu locally haven't settled. With settlement comes statutory requirement to relook at district plans, and so I imagine at that point there would be a further plan change to respond and adapt as, you know, whatever comes up as part of it.
I can just add that's been one of the common themes when I've been liaising with Para Waka is the Defence Force head honchos, wherever they are in Wellington, don't contact Para Waka, they contact Ngāti Apa in Rangatahi because they have statutory acknowledgements, and yet if you sit on the base and looked out, who would you see? So just knowing how important it is to get that right.
Thank you. Any further questions on the general residential? Councillor Belsby.
Interesting, as you said, the houses are getting smaller, compact, and therefore there are other issues that get involved. And I just done in the newsroom report the other day, out of control council planners face reform, and it was talking about how basically there's a development in Auckland and of houses close together. The council decided to take car parks out. A huge problem happened. Of course, people withdrew their houses, and then it got Christchurch here that had doors opening to their door, and there's a whole lot of problem. But I just read the last paragraph because it says Housing Minister Chris Bishop says standardising zoning, part of the proposed Resource Management Act reform, will enable the government to untie a Gordian knot of different planning rules. So I think obviously the government's going to bring in a uniform, would that be right?
Yeah, so they've already done that through the national planning standards. So the zonings are standardised across the country. I think the minister, I think he directly referenced Manawatū in his, I don't know whether it was accurate or not, but in his press release where he said essentially, you know, in the Kapiti Coast, you need a 20 square metre outdoor area in a Manawatū, you need a 60 square metre. So I think from his perspective, it's trying to standardise a lot of the standards that apply to minutes, so setbacks, height, site coverage. Because as you can imagine, and we understand it as well from a planning perspective, from a developer, if you're on this side of the Palmerston North line, you do this, and then you're on the Manawatū side of the line, it's completely different. And there definitely is a push to try and standardise across areas. So developers, because for them, it's a multitude of different approaches that they've got to adapt and change all their applications to. So there's 100% a direction to standardise that. I think a lot of the current, and touching on what Matt raised just before, a lot of the current frustrations are because plans don't provide any guidance on medium density housing. They are you're either at a permitted level, which medium density can't be, or you're fully non-complying, and then there's no direction at all. The council planners have no limit to what they can consider and that sort of thing. So the approach we've taken is to bring that right back to restricted discretion and say, this is what needs to be considered, and that's what it's limited to. Council can't go off on tangents, and it can't do this and it can't do that. I think though there needs to be considered. The reality is when you start putting a number of units close together, they need to talk to each other on site, so that there aren't unintended consequences of your door goes out onto. We certainly try not to get down to that granular level of design, but it is making sure that there is direction, that the architects or the designers do have those considerations. So because it's not the architect that gets criticised at the end of the day when those things go ahead, it's council. It's why did you let this development go ahead? So it's sort of a balancing act to try and ensure we are providing a lot more guidance, but still flexibility for that development community to adapt. And I think the other sort of core principle behind it is we're trying to draft plan chapters that are adaptive over time. Historically, planning provisions get very stuck in the moment and they don't adapt to new housing typologies. So the way we've approached this is to go, okay, we understand what's happening today, but also these provisions could be enforced for the next 10 plus years. So we need to make sure that they can adapt over that time as development changes, because if you look at what's happening today versus what happened 10, 15 years ago, it's vastly different. So that's sort of, the balance we're trying to achieve.
No, you're on to it. Thanks.
Thank you, councillor Underwood.
Thank you. Will the property economics report be accompanying this when it goes out?
Yep.
Because I just noticed, well, not just noticed, but I have noticed that it's a 2020 report and there seems to be a lot of stuff that's quite out of date, especially economic predictions and house price values, etc. Is that a problem? Because it's such an old report.
I think we had a good talk about that, and we think no, because there is more updated information that, for example, through the projections work that we do, Gina has that can supplement that. So that stands, as a document in time, and there is more information that can be called to. The other thing to, if in response to submissions, people, we will get submissions, right? People might question that. Then we have the ability between the notified step of the plan change and going to a hearing to go and commission additional work where we think that, people have raised issues that we think are significant and substantive. We have the ability to respond to that. So if someone says, actually, that there's a problem with that, which is fundamental, and we need to go off and do more work for it.
I think that also talks to what I just talked about though, around creating an adaptive planning framework. So it will evolve over time depending on if the economics change. It enables various forms of development, and we are trying to reduce the barriers. So we are trying to get out of the way of development where we don't need to be in the way of it. So, whilst that report is a snapshot in time from 2020, the way we've approached the plan is to evolve with the market over time and enable the market to do what it needs to do. Because at the end of the day, market pressures are at the forefront of this.
Just one other thing I noticed in the conclusion, the summary of that report, a lot of people will probably just go to the conclusion and the summary, and there's a table that goes over 3 pages where fielding is spelt incorrectly.
Oh, we can correct that.
I don't know if you can fix it.
That's spot on.
Thank you. Anything further on general residential? Councillor Campbell.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to note that these are pretty substantial proposals out of the district plan review, the biggest we've had here for a while, none of us, and I acknowledge all the work, so a lot of work going into this. And it seems to me you've done a fairly robust process to get to where we are in terms of your evaluations, cost benefits and option considerations. And also, I want to acknowledge that it seems to me it aligns very well with our discussions that we've had over time in regards to housing, economic development in the town centre discussions. So all good, very happy for it to go out for consultation. The question then, as we've sort of discussed often when we get to this point and we receive feedback, it can tend to be this not in my backyard approach or response. Particularly in this case, when we're talking about increased density and smaller lot sizes, medium density development rules, building heights, even the large format retail, those types of issues can generate that sort of thing. So do you think we've, in our comms program, able to cover that? And if we do get those responses, how would we deal with them?
Yeah, so from incentive here going forward to talk to that. So today we seek approval to notify. There is work we do after today to, here is an information sheet, a fact sheet, here is a briefing for the elected members before it goes out. We advise when that's going to be, so there's the window, the preparation of that. A big part of it is talking to why we are doing this and for the benefit of people who would like to make submissions. Here is how you make a submission. This is why some of those changes are being made. It is a challenge because people submit based on, the NIMBY factor, not in my backyard. People make it, and it is a little bit of a challenge in that planning process because you can't submit, well, you can submit saying, I don't like this, but that doesn't go anywhere, right? So a commissioner is not going to do anything with that, just other than notes that a person doesn't like it. People submitting need to go, there is an effect here, or you haven't considered the consequence of da-da-da-da-da, and those kinds of feedback become part of what forms the decision-making process. So we talk to people about that. People who are interested in making submissions and raising things, we sort of highlight that, they need to be careful about their words, but that's just part of the mix.
And I think central government have sent some pretty clear direction around urban development and the change of urban character and amenity and that sort of thing. And again, as I said before, planning has been quite backwards focused, and now we need to be forwards focused that things are going to change. And if you are in a street, for example, that has a number of, 50, 60-year-old homes, and you go and put a brand new development in there, it's going to be different, right? Because it's a modern day piece of development versus historic. And there's a lot of narrative coming out of central government that change in itself is not automatically an adverse effect, where it has been in the past. So we try and made that message very clear through our communication that, we are sort of giving effect to that direction, but also that change is going to happen and we're making sure that it's positive change.
Thank you. I have a general question too around the residential zone. Over the past years, we've had a number of submissions and requests from owners on the eastern side of South Street and Awahuri Road to look at rezoning to residential, just to allow for natural growth. We don't seem to have picked that up, and I'm just wondering where does, we've got some stormwater plans which do include South Street, so that kind of challenge we've already taken on board. So where does those requests fit?
Yeah, so as part of this plan change, the scope of it excludes additional rezoning, and the reason that approach has been put forward is to limit the total extent of work and the additional things that we consider. I absolutely recognise that people have asked for this before. We would be picking that up as part of a secondary residential review, because we've also got to look at precincts 1 to 3. We've got to look at the urban edge kind of extent. So my view is to keep our plan changes moving, we need to cut. That doesn't work with some people from a private perspective. And just some of those people, you know, we've met with them in the past and said, look, you could just go on and do your own resource consent. If you have a resource consent that means that the land is developed, you've done the work, and it's a lot easier for us to come across and then do the rezoning.
Yeah.
I know we will definitely get feedback on that at the same point.
Okay.
People asking us.
So as long as we've got it, yeah, it keeps being delayed when you've got development interest in it. And it's easy to say you can just get a resource consent, but that takes an awful lot of money, time and effort, time especially, for something that if we want that to happen, why wouldn't we be looking at it sooner rather than later?
And it just comes down to our our own internal resourcing of the whole district plan project, and what are we putting our priority to? We can't do everything.
Thank you. Anything further on general residential? Otherwise, we'll move to the town centre. Plan change. I'll kick it off. I have a couple of questions. Page 158. TCZP41. This is talking about ensuring that sites are built up to the site boundary. I totally get that in Manchester Square to keep the look of the town centre, but I would actually question, is that what we still want? You look at the Rose Bowl development, that old development there, that cost that owner $160,000 of extra activity to get permission to recess that back from the site boundary. And I would challenge anyone to say that that wasn't a positive outcome with the extra parking it's created. And I'm just putting it out there. Why? I get it in the square, but outside, why?
So I'll answer that first, and Richard can jump in. So first of all, that we have as part of this proposal, the town centre is shrinking. So it's a lot larger. It's shrinking down and being condensed. And my take on that is that we need to have a real careful think about the utility and the value of that built area within that. And if we had the Rose Bowl type development repeated all the way across there, you would lose that concentration of what the town centre, the traditional town centre would look like. Richard, do you want to jump in?
Yeah. And that's actually a very useful starting point. So yes, the town centre area has been shrunken down to essentially what was the traditional retail core. Key feature of the retail core is that pedestrian environment. Now, pedestrian environment includes those verandas along the street frontage. It also includes that sort of whole character sort of sense that, Ferguson Street in that area there is actually partly prized, I'd argue, by actually having that sense of enclosure, the walkable environment, things like that. If you have something that's sort of set back, that's sort of set across multiple sites, all of a sudden you lose that cohesiveness, the sense of continuity in veranda coverage. It ceases to be such an attractive pedestrian environment. It may be great for cars, but for people who just want to walk from shop to shop, it actually becomes less attractive. It doesn't mean, of course, that you are totally forbidden from actually setting stuff back, but taking up your point, your worship, it does mean that it's get a resource consent, albeit for discretionary activities, saying actually, hey, how are you going to provide these other amenities?
Thank you. On page 161, and there's references all through here about the town centre design guidelines. I know there are people that think town centre design guidelines mean that we're looking for replica buildings. That is not what the design guidelines do. Having been part of putting those together some years ago. It's about how do we complement new building to work with the old And if we're not going to, if we're suggesting that we take it out of the district plan, how will people even know that they're there? And how do we ensure that people look at it and consider it?
Okay, so the town centre design guidelines, if you look through it, it's largely an information resource at the moment. Its main value in the existing operative plan is through incorporation through a restricted discretionary consent. Until you actually hit the consent process, you might not actually encounter them at all. The key features of design guidelines are actually picked up and now being implemented activity standards. So the actual design guidelines now take a more regulatory approach, but in a permissive environment. If people are interested to know how do you comply with those permitted activity standards, then the town centre guidelines can still be made as a resource. It won't have the same effect in terms of being incorporated as part of a rule. One of the issues we found reading through the design guidelines in retrospect was if you're looking for clear guidance as to which way you actually need to go, some of the wording is quite ambiguous. It suggests, well, you could do this, or you could do that, or you could do that. So which one is it? In some cases, that is a picture with a tick box or a cross. And somehow you're supposed to deduce from that what key features you're supposed to be incorporating. The permitted activity standards actually pick up on what those key features are. And again, your worship, picking up on your point, which I think was actually very valid, it's about a complementary style. It's not about replicating the buildings that are there.
So you're saying the principles of what we're trying to do are in there in a different area.
If you look at permitted activity standards and the policies, absolutely, your worship.
So basically what, the start point of the current town centre is as is today, every building needs resource consent. Every building, you have to assess it against these design guidelines. There's a higher barrier, to do the work to get anything happening automatically in the resource consent space. What we think in terms of being more enabling of order of development is, Richard's taken the content of the design guide and looked about what's it really focused on. It's focused on the front, where a building hits the street. We can take those outcomes, put them in standards. So straight away, the start point for Grant Hatfield Enterprises building a building is his permitted activity instead of needing a resource consent. He shows us what his design is. It's only if he doesn't meet one of those design criteria that he then comes back to resources.
Okay, thank you.
So the idea is that reducing the barriers to development.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Shaw.
On that page in those guidance and groups, reference to home. We've got lots and lots of acronyms on that page. Number 3, an activity located on a hail site. Everything else has the acronyms written out in full for the average everyday reader. So do we need to?
We can fix that.
Hazardous activities and industries list.
Thank you for that. I think my slide, or maybe not second to last. Page 171 at the top, minimum unit size. This is an interesting when we're saying must not be less than 35 square metres. However, we know that there is demand for studio living, and if you take Auckland, they go to the other extreme and go down to a 20 square metre option. Or the question I'm asking is why restricted at 35 square metres? How does that allow for studio living?
The 35 square metres ironically actually comes from some modelling that Auckland Council did. It's the minimum size for a bedroom, sort of a small living area, kitchenette, laundry facilities, and a bathroom. You can get smaller than that if you want to have things that fold out of the wall. Coming back to, I think, the point that Matt might have made earlier on, 35 metres, it's pretty sure it's taking around somewhere to actually have a discussion. So we've put up 35 metres. It's similar to what Palms North also has. If people believe there is a demand for 20 square metre units in fielding, then so be it. The other thing which I have to say is, again, it's not an absolute. If you want to go for a resource consent, have a development which has 20 square metre units in it, then there's still ability to do that, but should have to go submit a resource consent to do so.
Okay, thank you. So if people think, if developers think that's an issue,
Yeah,
they
can raise it with us.
And we're trying to remember through that summary material, you know, what are we trying to achieve here? We're trying to achieve people living in the town centre. Here is what we think is a reasonable start position for that, for those standards. Tell us if you think that's needs to be done.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
what submission process is about.
My last question is page 179. We're talking about the chronological order of what's happened. In 2018, we had a significant town centre vision exercise, which is referred to often, particularly in our town centre refresh. So I think that needs to go in there.
Very good.
And that's me. So I'll open it up for any other questions, comments on the town centre. Councillor Hepburn.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I'm pretty brief on this one, team. Just on page 163 and R2, residential activities, Kapakainga housing, visitor accommodation, multi-unit residential developments. And I may have missed this as well, but I'm sure we had a maximum of 5. Is there a maximum number for that?
No, there isn't.
There's no maximum. Okay. And just you've given a pretty good explanation around the field and town centre design guidelines. And I was looking on page 178. Number 7, the deletion of requirements to comply with the field and town centre design guidelines, but with key elements incorporated into permitted activity standards. I think you probably explained that actually. And possibly one more. Just in terms of page 254, under TCZP2, requiring any dwellings in the town centre zone to be located above ground floor level, and appropriate acoustic insulation. So the first thing I thought about that was the Urquhart building, you know, which in my view would be, you know, I think in the courthouse actually, you know, they would be good potential residential, you know, have residential capability. So do I just assume then that if you wanted to do that, it's another reason, it's another consent process to do that?
For the Urquhart building, absolutely. For the courthouse, it will be in the expanded mixed use zone, so the boundary will be brought in, so that could actually convert straight away without a resource consent, because the residential would be allowed at ground floor.
Yeah.
On that one. Yeah.
Okay. So
Excellent.
done and dusted.
Open it up. Any further questions, discussion on the town centre part? None. So we can go back to the recommendations on page 19. I just made a note here, talking about minor amendments, but anything that we've raised today is minor, and I was just thinking about if it was anything that may be significant, it would be good for us to run our eye over it before, but given the discussion, Lynn.
We've had a discussion about this, and minor amendments in reference to that recommendation is more about tone than actually a substantive change.
Cross references. I think, you know, we are doing a number of plan changes. It's really important that they talk to each other. My take would be that, and to Lynn's point, you know, if there is something that substantively comes up, you know, then we would need to be, you know, we need to be communicating that back.
Thank you. So there has been an updated recommendation as shown on the board with the highlight of the additional words. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please?
Yeah. Sorry, just
I'm happy to move it. It's probably easier to read straight in front of me. That the council approve proposed plan change B, general residential zone, and proposed plan change E, Feilding Town Centre to be publicly notified under clause 5, schedule 1 of the Resource Management Act 1991, noting that the section on general residential zone and subdivision chapters has been updated to ensure consistency in approach to matters of discretion and has been tabled at this meeting. And that the General Manager Community be authorised to make minor amendments to the proposed plan changes B and E, if required prior to public notification, including amendments required following peer legal review and further iwi engagement. Can I just make a comment there? I guess that goes back to what I said before. But given we don't know what amendments are coming out of from the legal review or iwi engagement, rather than have to go through all that again, if there was some questioning around what that comes back at, whether there was an opportunity to see that before it came back.
Absolutely. My approach on this space is transparency. So, and as we've done in the past, there has been a couple of times where there has been an edit, and it's absolutely our role to share that back. Just again, you know, this text comes from standard recommendation from previous. We don't always get legal review over everything, so it's only if something comes up that, you know, hold on, we need to have that in place. It doesn't automatically mean that we go to that. So transparency is important.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So we have a mover, seconded by Councillor McFadden. Any further discussion? Councillor Underwood.
Thanks. If there was going to be changes, would they, like, instead of reading the whole thing again, that
We would
the
totally
changes would be
highlight
highlighted?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you. So we have a mover and a seconder. I'll put the motions. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Motions are carried. Thank you. Good discussion. Thank you for all the good work on this. And yeah, over you go. It's, you know, we do all this work and then we've got some RMA changes coming for the better, hopefully, but it will mean some extra workload. But if we get the right outcomes, I guess it's worth it.
And I would say to that, that it's, you know, and we'll come back and talk to council in a workshop space about RMA reform and what that means. But you know, we need to make sure, as I said when the last government proposal, we want to make sure that our plan is up to date, so that when we start whatever that central government process is, we are in a really good space to be able to say, this is what matters to the Manawatū community. This is what these things mean for us. And then we are, as we're working with other councils, you know, we can go, well, hold on, Palmerston City, you know, we don't agree with that approach. This is what we think about it. You know, we've been working with that for 4 years already.
Excellent. Thank you. Councillor Shaw.
And what's the comments plan around this? I'm just very aware that we've consulted the community on a number of quite big topics, and they might be just a bit consulted out.
Yeah, and from past examples of notified, we try and do more work at the draft stage. So in the notified stage, we focus on the targeted audience and the captive audience. We are required by law to write a letter to every affected property owner, so that there's a letter that goes out. Again, you know, that needs to be very, very brief. It needs to be written in a way that is understandable. Why are we doing this? How do I find out more information? How do I have a say? Here is that other information about what things are and make a mark. You know, the work that's council staff have been doing to make connections with the development community, the other partners, stakeholders, community committees, that becomes really important in terms of just the feedback loop. Because we actually do want people to have a say. We are interested in how can this be improved or not.
No.
And to Matt's point earlier, you know, when we pull the comms plan together, the leaders to go out, as we've done in the past, we will give elected members an opportunity to have a look at that before it's released. And there'll be fact sheets, etc., for elected members, etc.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you for all the good work.
Thank you.
Right, we move to page 379. We're on 10.3. This is our significance and engagement policy, seeking approval to consult on this.
Thank you. So this is
obviously the significance and engagement policy. It was last year in March of 2020, so we're going on 4 years, 5 years. We were due to review it during the long-term plan, as we've discussed previously. And then it was requested by members that we do some more work and make a bit more of a substantial impact. So that substantially changed policy is presented to you for consideration, for endorsement. And to summarize what the changes are, we've expanded the structure and made a lot of changes to its grammar, just how it reads, plain English, make it more sort of accessible. There's a new section on community participation, trying to describe to a casual reader how they can engage with council, the various ways they can do that. A more detailed approach to assessing significance, hopefully not too restrictive, it's a bit of a balance, but more detailed than what it was in the existing policy. And then same with the engagement, a bit more information around our engagement methods and how they might be tailored to the relative significance of the item. We've updated the strategic assets, which we're required to have in the policy. And then finally in Schedule 4, there is a section around our sort of 4 principles for engagement, which includes a stronger commitment to transparency and Māori participation. Happy to answer questions shortly, but if it's endorsed, it will go out for consultation. I've included a bit of a timeline in section 10 of the report. Essentially, it'll go out for a month. Pretty stock standard. We will try and speak to a few groups just who may not be as aware that it's going out. So things like the Youth Council, potentially liaising with some Māori groups and also through the Welcoming Communities focus group. And that's just about trying to increase the awareness that it is out. I don't anticipate that we'll be flooded with submissions. But it would be good for us to at least know that people were aware that we were submitting on it and had the chance to provide input if they were interested.
Thanks, Ash. Thank you. Yes, we have discussed this in detail. Open it up for questions, discussion. Councillor Hagley.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Look, I know we've been through this. The one thing under community, I think on page 7, Ash, of the attachment, we rightfully recognise the common affinity to land and waterways that iwi hapa marae have. But I also believe that the rural community have, equally the same love and affinity, and I would like to see that recognised. And that may be as simple as putting in words like cultural narrative, but together with the rural community, they share a common affinity to the land and waterways. And I think I'd just like to see we recognise that not only mana whenua have that affinity with the land, but most people that farm the land do as well. Other than that, because, I think we've been through this.
Thank you. Councillor Underwood.
Thank you. In the glossary, the first term significance, down the bottom, we've got a definition from the Local Government Act, but that is the definition of the word significant, which I think is important because it actually mentions significance in its definition. So I'm just wondering if that can be changed somehow so that that definition is for significant and not significance.
Sorry, can I just clarify, you're referring to the term significance at the top of that table?
Yeah. At the bottom of that definition in italics is a local government definition. And that definition is for the word significant, not significance. Oh, I'm referring to the document that came in the attachment that came into the email this morning is.
Oh,
it's actually the significance engagement policy.
Yeah.
The document. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So it's just not the one we're looking at.
Yep. Yeah, cool. Okay. Thank you.
And also, please, under the engagement, where it says it ranges from informing residents, that's an official process, is it? Like officially
informing, as in sending out a letter or putting it?
I intend that more colloquially.
I'm just wondering if it could be explained so that makes it sound that it's an official.
It's not necessarily official.
It's not necessarily official, so this information could be imparted just by word of mouth when you're talking in the street. And that's considered engagement.
It's considered one of the ways that we engage with our community.
So informing residents in that way could perhaps inform one person.
Well, it would be engaging with one person.
Which I don't consider to be engagement. I think that's a bit misleading for people who are reading that. I think the point that Francis is making is that engagement happens all the time. We do it as liaison councillors, but it is only one of the methods that we use to engage. Yeah, but I get the impression from this being in the glossary that it's an official. Yeah. So engagement is very low level. Very low level.
It can be.
It can be. Depends what the topic you're talking about. And just the last point, on page 11, where the strategic assets are listed, it's got community hub, but the word library is not mentioned. I'm just thinking for clarity, for some people, would be good to have the library in there. Yeah, thank you. That's a good suggestion.
Let's go. Thank you.
Anything further? Okay. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Your Worship. I remember when the Significant Engagement Policy 2020 came to our public forum chambers, and I want to just expand on some of the comments that I made then. I spoke about, I think I gave some light criticism that I would be embarrassed to consult with Te Koto Reo on where it stood in 2020. I want to commend the team for all the hard work that you've put in to expand the policy. I remember giving Rotorua as the benchmark of what I thought that our council could aspire to be. And I'm really excited today. We have the Mayor of Rotorua, and I'm going to give her an update on what the significant engagement policy is. And I just want to mention to the team that I'm not embarrassed for to see that
Councillor Bell, you've frozen on.
Making a submission on behalf of all the marae and hapu of their thoughts on the policy.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. The gist, we lost you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We've lost you at the end, but
I
guess what you're saying is that, yes, we can. Can you hear us? No. Okay. So I get the point that I think Councillor Bell is saying is that since our original discussion, she's comfortable with the additional information and references that we've made into this policy. So that being the case, we have a recommendation. We have a few minor amendments being suggested. So can I have a mover and a seconder, please?
Sorry, not to be semantic. I've just slightly updated that the statement of proposal is going to be designed. So I've just included that in there, and there might be the very odd minor edit to that, but nothing, no substantial changes.
Okay, thank you. So can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Page.
Thank you, Worship. The council endorses the draft significance and engagement policy table with or without amendment, and adopts the statement of proposal tabled for formal consultation on the draft significance and engagement policy, noting that this is subject to final design and minor edits. Or does not endorse the draft.
No, which
No, we're on,
ones?
don't read that out.
Thank you, and Ash has amended that first one because we have had some amendments, so it will be with amendment, so.
Yes.
Councillor McFadden.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Quigley, thank you. Any further discussion? Put the motions, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, motions are carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. So there are no later items, so we'll move to item 12, and I will move that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting, namely confirmation of minutes and a tender award recommendation. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Short, thank you. Put the motion, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, motion is carried. Thank you.